the title. I mean, it's just insane. The amount of moving parts for an online game, it's just ridiculous. Oh, and you might be able to notice that my voice is a little bit weird. It's because I was chugging your dad's cock last night. He's very tasty. Alright, some context beforehand. I am an amateur game developer. How amateur? Well, I don't like level design and modeling, so I won't go beyond experimental short games. I made one that's about talking to a robot, another one about a horror rock paper scissors game, which did have some traction, and ever since then I've been working for another fun idea. And then it hit me. Arguing incessantly. Literally, that's the theme. Yes, there's an actual goal, which I'll explain in a bit, but that is the concept. It's one that I've always found funny. So, in this context, you have 4 players and a bomb in the middle of the room counting down. Everyone's job is to find out who planted it by arguing. In theory, the game would pick one person who is called the saboteur. And if accusations turn out to be true, the other players can then see a code they use to disarm the bomb by pressing E and then typing it in. That's what happens if you find the saboteur. If you don't, you lose a minute from the timer. I never really came up with a good name for the other players besides innocent. So yeah, the saboteurs have to cause chaos to keep eyes off of them, and innocents figure out who it was that armed the bomb. In theory, this is a game about chaotic, go-nowhere arguments. So you'd definitely be encouraged to start some shit if you're also an innocent. Yeah, this is basically Among Us report arguments into a core game. And, like the fantastic developer I am, I forgot to implement voice chat. So if you play it with friends, use Discord or have the game running in the background while you argue in real life. This is an idea that I've had for a few months, maybe. I gave up quickly on my first attempt because I hadn't found a good tutorial for setting up a network. But on my second try, thank God, I found a great tutorial by Bud Games with Unity's Photon system. I swear to God, that shit worked like fucking butter. If you want to make a multiplayer game, go to Bud Games channel. If you go with Unity, that is. It works like a fucking treat. Now, obviously, while the concept is simple, what I needed was still beyond the simple put 2 players in one match. And this is where the incredible excitement gave way to terrible frustration. So here is the UI. You got a timer in the top right corner. The text object on the top left indicates if you're innocent or a saboteur. There's also an alibi generator because I hate myself, and a voting system, which, if I remember correctly, opens when you press F. To anyone who may think you can just plop down 2 player controllers with no change to their code and it works, think again. You see, by default, a camera script can look like this. This logic basically says, hey, if the player character moved their mouse, then we rotate the camera. But what happens when there are 2 players calling for the same thing? That's right, player 2 controls player 1. But Photon has a nice little way to get around that, which I still don't fucking understand. Basically, you add a boolean, which can either be true or false by the way, that checks whether the object in-game calling this logic is the client player in question. This somehow prevents players from controlling each other through black magic wizardry fuckery. And okay, great, now the players don't control each other. But the UI is still fucked in showing everyone's UI at once. The timer wasn't all that hard, considering it works the same for all players. So I just had to make sure all players were looking at the exact same thing, which took me 2 fucking hours. But it's fine. It was fixed. It was fine. Then the player role text object. It took me, I think, 4 days for it to be acceptable. Not fixed, acceptable. I'm about to go on a childish rant on a thing I do as a hobby and love, alright? I love the act of playing in games and making them, obviously. This whole process of making games is incredible. But holy fuck, do I not get how when you code one thing, something else breaks. I've experienced it before, but not to this degree. I tried so many times for it to work, and nearly every time it would make the alibi generator, more on that later, break. One time the timer broke. The bomb code would also break. So at first, as expected, the player could see everyone's role on screen. Doing the photon Boolean thing to make everyone see their own role didn't work. It made everyone but the host's role disappear from the screen. Eventually, I managed to make it so that 1 out of every 2 games the role UI showed up correctly. And from there, it seemed like I made no progress, either breaking something else or nothing really better happening, until eventually, with no change from me, it started working. So again, the system was breaking 1 out of every 2 games, then it changed to about once every 10 games. Yeah, it's still buggy, yes, it needs more work, but counterpoint, fuck you. Just the text displaying your role gave me a fucking aneurysm. Holy fuck, it's a small thing that reads either innocent or saboteur. Hell, some of the issues that happened were, for example, for some reason, saboteur being displayed in quotation marks. Fucking quotation marks? It's so meaningless. There's 1 saboteur and 3 innocents. 2 scripts are also like communicating with each other about that, and all the game has to do is look at the 4 players, see the role they were given, and show the UI appropriately. And in the full release, it struggles with it on occasion. I swear, I'm going to vandalize someone's home. And then, because I'm so smart, I made a fucking story generator. It's not easy to start arguments when all you've got to guide you is a bomb that's about to go off. So I decided that a 3-part quote-unquote story generator, or how it's called in-game, the alibi generator for morning, evening and night. The setting is at night in the basement, made with a beautiful atmospheric modular house. So I wanted to generate things that players did at each time frame, so they can talk about and accuse each other. And it worked fine, until I decided to have inconsistencies in mentioning other players. So that was another 2 weeks of debugging and trying to get it to work half decent, and it breaking more things, and it not even working, and it displaying everyone's alibi at once. Just constant hair pulling and staring at the screen in utter confusion. And at the end of all that time, it still didn't work. And I am not experienced enough to tell you why. Making a multiplayer game was a fun idea, before I got working on it. I'm coming out of here with a newfound respect for even Call of fucking Duty. There are hundreds of moving parts to single player games, like how dynamic music system can impact gameplay while you're parkouring around the city, or how a game can keep track of your decisions. But then you add onto that a second player. Don't talk about 64 or 120, just one, and everything is suddenly different. Even for mods, I'd imagine almost everything has to be tweaked. I remember hearing news about some multiplayer Skyrim mod. Just to work something like that needs is undoubtedly insane. And it's partially due to that I was considering doing an offline mode for Two Point the Bomb, the multiplayer game I've just spent God knows how long telling you about. Because for an offline mode, instead of the hassle of network, I have the advantages and frankly more fun of single player coding. I was particularly excited about the AI aspect, because obviously it needs to be fucking complex to have chaotic arguments. And I did get to work on that. But as it happened, I realized that with NPCs, the chaos I wanted is kind of lost, and it turns into a regular conversation game, which is also fine. But with that, I could make it its own, far better game. But that's the story for today. What's the moral, little Jimmy? Multiplayer is hell, humans are hell, I'm not ever touching that side of game development ever again. So, this is an ad, technically. So, this game I've told you about for God knows how long, again, it's called Who Planted That Bomb? It is available right now on itch.io through the link in the description. It is free with donations accepted. So if you and your friends want to try it, go ahead. I talked a lot of shit about it, but it is playable. You will have chaotic arguments, and you will either win or lose matches. Also, fun fact, there's a disabled lobby system in the game. If you follow Bud Game's tutorial, but can't understand why no buttons are instantiated in the lobby when you create a game, it's because the pre-existing default button that's used as a reference is likely getting deleted, thus no button can appear. I don't know how to solve it, but maybe it is what could cause the issue for you. It's worth looking into. And lastly, a small update on the Magellan video. The script is at 13 fucking pages. It will likely be a 3-part series. Definitely a 2-parter. And I will maybe open a Patreon when the first video comes out. Subscribe for more videos. I post semi-infrequently, and thanks for watching.